Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Thames Centre. The date is Monday, March 27th, 2023, and we're located in the Municipal Office Council Chambers at 4305 Hamilton Road in Dorchester. And the time is 5 p.m. and I would like to call this meeting to order. Don't believe we have any additions to the agenda. So I'd like to call for any disclosure of pecuniary interest. No, okay, thank you. Like to announce
Ms. Horton, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you now. I wasn't hearing anything for a minute there.
We're ready to proceed with your delegation.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and staff. My name is Melanie Horton. I'm from Escher Planning Incorporated. And joining me with this delegation is Marcello Vecchio from Fari Holdings Corporation. My colleague John Mutton from Municipal Solutions is unable to join us this evening, but he'll be available to answer questions as we move through this request. And there was a few slides provided. Are you able to share those, or would you like me to do that?
You'll have to share your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Just give me a moment here. Let me know if you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. So our delegation this evening is to discuss a proposal for a request for a community infrastructure and housing accelerator order, or CHIO. As you may know, the province over the past few years had been involved in land use changes through minister's zoning orders. They've essentially not using that tool any longer. And so the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator Order is a new tool that was introduced under Bill 109 and is part of the Planning Act. So the property that we're going to discuss this evening is in Putnam on the north side of Highway 401 on Breen Road, so east of Putnam Road. You can see it on the screen there outlined in yellow. Property is about 37 hectares in size, and immediately to the west or the left of this property is an 18-hectare parcel that's also owned by Fari Holdings Corporation. The current zoning on the parcel in yellow is agricultural, and the adjacent lands owned by Fari are industrial. And in fact, most of that area around Putnam, or large portions of that area, are zoned industrial, taking advantage of the strategically important 401 corridor area for potential employment uses. So the CHIO order would essentially rezone the property to allow for employment uses, which require large areas, including things like warehousing and logistics. And the reason for the request is Marcello can speak to this as well, but Fari has received a number of requests from parties that are interested in large scale warehousing uses. So they're talking up to 1 million square feet is what their clients are looking for. and this would be a great candidate site given its access to the 401 at Putnam Road. The CHIA order, I'll explain a little bit what it is. It's a tool that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has introduced, as I mentioned, and what's required is a resolution from council to support it, as well as a public notice of public meeting to inform the public of the process. But essentially, the province through this order is the only agency that has the ability to, I'll use the word override provincial policy. So currently, if FARI were to come forward with an official plan amendment through the routine process, there's a policy in the provincial policy statement which would prevent this from being converted to an industrial use, given that it's currently agricultural. The province, however, is able to make that determination if it's appropriate to change an agricultural parcel to employment use. So that FARI would work with municipal staff through the site plan control process to address any report requirements, studies, and site-specific concerns that may come up. I just wanted to bring up this other map on the screen here. This is a map that comes out of the Thames Centre's 401 corridor land use strategy that was completed back in 2006, I believe. And you'll see it on the screen in blue. The light blue areas are all the industrial lands in the Putnam area. And the three parcels outlined in red and numbered are sites that were identified through that study as suggested to also be included as employment or industrial lands. So that's it's just to reference that this is an area that the municipality has considered in the past as being an appropriate site for additional employment lands. So this evening, what we're here to request is that that the township consider providing public notice for this community infrastructure and housing accelerator order, and request that council consider a resolution to support it. That would be forwarded to MPP Rob Flack, as well as the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clerk. And we would continue to work with staff, as I mentioned, on site plan and development details through the process. So that concludes the overview of our delegation this evening, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on council comments? All right. Councillor Lockie?
Through your worship, just a general comment. I think it's a good idea. I like that it's close to the 401 corridor. So if we are going to expand for employment purposes, it keeps the heavy trucks off of the roads in the town.
Any other comments from council? Questions? Deputy Mayor Smyberg?
Thank you. I just want to be clear. I am hoping that the applicant is aware that there's a subsequent staff report that's dealing with the process under this new mechanism. So we're really not here to provide commentary on the application. Just want to make sure that has been communicated. Thank you.
Yes,
And
thanks. I appreciate that comment. I just would also add that we have provided, in addition to the sort of very brief overview we've provided here, we've provided Mark Bancroft with a bit more detail on the tool, that the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator tool, as well as what's being proposed. So hopefully that gives him enough information to come back to council with his report. But certainly we're happy to provide any additional details that he may need.
Thank you very much. And that is in fact the case. We will be, Mr. Bancroft will be making a presentation a little later in the process this evening during the meeting. So thank you very much then, Ms. Usher. I don't think that there's anything else at this moment then.
Okay, thank you very much for the time this evening.
Thank you. So at this time, on this particular thing, we have a recommended motion before us that the presentation by Melanie Horton of Escher Planning, Inc. I'm sorry, said your name wrongly. Sorry about that. That the presentation by Melanie Horton of Escher Planning, Inc. on behalf of Fari Holdings Corporation regarding a proposed community infrastructure and housing accelerator order for 4453 Breen Road be received for information. Do I have someone to move the motion? Deputy Mayor Smyber, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Excuse me, Sarah, is Tom still online?
No, he's left the meeting.
Okay. Do you know whether he's on his way to council meeting or not?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, just wanting to be sure for next time. All right, so the next item is a public meeting under drainage, Court of Revision. So at this time, I'd like to advise that in accordance with the Drainage Act, the Court of Revision for the Caddy Creek Drain 2022 is to be made up of a total of 3 members, 2 members from Thames Center Council and 1 from the Township of Zora. Kevin Stewart from Zora Township is in attendance tonight, and he is representing that municipality. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a counselor to come forward to. No,
Sorry, I was just going to make a motion that we adjourn our regular meeting and sit as Court of Revision.
I ain't going to that.
Okay.
So at this time, then we'll do it, that the council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as the Court of Revision to consider the Caddy Creek Drain 2022, and that the following persons be appointed to sit on the Court of Revision for the Caddy Creek Drain 2022. Obviously, we have Councillor Kevin Stewart here, and I need myself will be chair of this, and then I need 1 other person from Thames Center Council to sit on this committee as well. Sure. All right, then. So then further in the motion that the following persons be appointed to sit on the Court of Revision for the Caddy Creek Drain. Councillor Lockie, representing the municipality of Thames Center. Councillor Kevin Stewart, representing the Township of Zora, and I will be there as chair, so the other member. All right, so we have a mover, Councillor, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Smyber and Councillor Lockie. In favor? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, so we have the engineer in attendance here.
Yes, good evening. Travis Pitt would normally provide a little bit of an introduction, but Travis had indicated to me just by phone here that he was on virtually and somehow got bumped from the meeting and he can't get back in. So he asked me to continue for him. The Court of Revision is a meeting that deals with the distribution of the cost. So the assessments. It's not, we can't change the total cost as a whole, but it's with what each property is assessed through the Drainage Act. So in the schedule of assessment, the typical process would be that a landowner, if they do wish to appeal, would submit an appeal in writing 10 days in advance of the meeting. And beyond that, the court can make a recommendation to accept a verbal appeal if they wish at their choice. It's not required, but it's something that can be done. If somebody would come in off the street, or in this case, virtually ask to be making a verbal appeal on it. We have, to my knowledge, there's been no written appeals made. There was one inquiry that we made ourselves through Travis and us. We had been appointed to look into making some small changes assessment wise on another municipal drain that is within the boundaries of the Caddy Creek. So when we went to look at making some adjustments to it, we found that we also needed to make some adjustments to the Caddy Creek assessment schedule. So there is one property on the northerly boundary of the watershed area that we recommended to make a small change to the schedule. And that has been submitted prior to this and even included, I think, in the distribution prior to the notice of today's meeting. So it is a small change, and for that, to avoid having to potentially adjourn and reconvene at a later date, the expense involved with that can be quite expensive. So we've suggested to take the assessment from the one that's being altered and add it to a road, because the road is present at the meeting. We know that the municipality is present, and so we don't have to go through that notice procedure. So from a sake of future potential cost of changing that, we are recommending that we take the assessment from the one property and add it to the road. And that was in the previous package that was provided. But beyond that, I have no knowledge of any written submissions.
So do we have anybody in the room or virtually who wishes to speak to this or has questions?
There's no one in attendance virtually.
There is. Yeah, okay. Would you like to come forward and state your name and address?
Okay, I'm Don Campbell from 932 Elgin Road.
Okay,
I started this drainage part,
sure.
and I just like to see on this map where this creek actually comes and goes.
Yeah, it's been a substantial period of time. I would have to go back. If there was
'Cause I got
any
a letter
work,
from Mr. Dennis
Yeah.
Shand, if
Okay.
everybody remembers Dennis, and nothing's been touched on this
Yeah.
way more than 30 years. I think the one heading into Missouri has, what's the next one over anyways, Noseworthy's been touched. But this one hasn't been touched from the river north for 50 years. Mr. Bob Crandall, if you remember him, he told me that himself, and he farmed my property before I bought it. So I'm just thinking back, like, why has there been neglect on this drain for over 50 years? And then now all of a sudden we're stuck with the bill to fix this.
Are you able to?
yes,
answer
I'm
that?
able to. I was just waiting
Okay.
to sure is there, okay, I can respond to that. And I'm speaking on behalf of Travis in this case and the municipality. Typically, and I'm confident that that would be the case for Thames Center, is that maintenance is done on a reactionary basis, on a request basis. It's not that the municipality will go out and look at particular drains and say, it's been a long time, it's out of repair, we should do this. They wait until landowners who are either along the drain or affected by the drain actually request it. And then they can go out and complete maintenance. In this particular case, a new report was suggested due to the age of the original report. So if we look in the history of this report here, it'll state the date of the original report, which in this case was 1910. So the difficulty becomes in maintenance. And in 1910, there was a report that would have indicated you can maintain the drain, and the municipality is obligated to maintain the drain if required and if people ask. But because the schedule is so old, the property configuration and the changes of the land itself over time, and then changes of the drain physically are significant enough that it's outdated and obsolete to use to distribute the cost and to try and excavate down and try to maintain something that was designed in 1910. So then we were looking at making a new report under section 78, which requires the new schedule. So that's there, and in the future, it can be maintained. So you don't need to have a new engineer's report the next time. And in this particular case, we were asked to restrict the amount of work that was going to be done under maintenance, but it could be done in the future. But typically municipalities do not go out and do maintenance on drains without being requested. There is usually a form that the drainage superintendent would give to the landowner, and they would submit it to the municipality. I'm not going to say that's the case for absolutely every municipality in Ontario, but the majority of the ones in this part of Ontario deal with it in that manner.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, does that answer your
No, it
question?
doesn't. So
Okay.
to me, this is a whole waste of money. This whole procedure is a waste of money. If we're not going to do it properly, trash it. If you're not going to start at the Thames River and go north, you're wasting time. You're wasting time.
We have not had any requests to continue downstream past the point of.
That's where the water exits, is the river. Think about that. This drainage, it's water, it's heading to the river. You can't stop halfway through my place and stop on Marion Street. It's a waste of time. You got to go to the river to solve this problem. Or we might as well sell properties in Dorchester and make ponds out of them.
In this particular project, we had the lands up where your property is requesting maintenance. We investigated the drain downstream far enough that there's enough fall in the land where if there's issues with the drain, if it's out of maintenance, and it probably is, I don't disagree that the drain may be out of maintenance and may need maintenance downstream, but the ground in that particular area is low enough and there's enough drop in the ground that it won't have an impact up where the work was requested. So we only went downstream far enough that we deemed it physically necessary and not continued downstream past that point. So the ground levels where if the drain overflows and starts flooding the adjacent lands isn't going to impact the lands up where the maintenance was requested. So it's physically, they're not joined anymore physically. So but that distance, it was in this particular case, over 1,000 meters. So it was over 1 kilometer downstream from the area that we had to go to get that drop in elevation. But at that point, we were able to terminate. If there's other landowners that wish something to occur, they would have to submit a request to the municipality, and then you could do that. And throughout this process, and prior to this process, I don't believe there's been any request to go down that distance. So it can be done. It could be done, in the future, and it would probably need a new report because that area is in a similar situation where the report is still the 1910 report. But we don't go and start expanding a project beyond the areas that are absolutely necessary. We deal with the requests of the landowners who are physically affected.
No, still to me, it's a waste of money. So I got to go back to work. So do it.
Can't hear you.
We were keeping it secret there, Tom. No, I was just asking about sort of the point of order concerning the gentleman's concerns. So, are there any other questions regarding the assessment only? Tom has one. Yes, Tom.
Am I correct in assuming if there is interest in that further downstream section that it would require a petition from adjacent landowners and then that could be pursued as a separate project?
Yes, that's right. It wouldn't have to be an actual petition. It could be done through a request form. It's an existing municipal drain and a request is sufficient. If you're constructing a new municipal drain, it would be done through a petition. So it's a slightly different format, but it's the same premise. You base it on request from landowners.
Is Mr. Campbell still in attendance or is he left?
He has left, Tom.
Okay, well, I would suggest if he wishes to pursue that, then that would be his at best course of action versus at this juncture.
Thank you. All right. Any questions from the members of Court of Revision? Any questions? Yeah, okay. All righty then. So the recommended motion then at this point is that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Caddy Creek Drain 2022, revised for the Court of Revision with no appeals being submitted, adopt the drainage assessment schedule dated November the 3rd, 2022, as submitted by Spreet Associates. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lockie? Yes, sorry.
There was a revised schedule dated February the 1st for that small change that I had mentioned.
Okay,
So that's the date of the schedule that should be adopted in this case.
February the 1st of 2023 then. Is that what you're saying? Just for the record?
That's correct.
All right then. All right then. So that's duly noted then. Do we have someone to move the motion with that slight amendment to the date? Councillor Lucky and seconded by Councillor Heeman. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Councillor Stewart then. Thank you. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Motion's carried. All right. Then we will need to move on to the, we need a motion to move for the Court of Revision to sit under the Drainage Act to consider the Brar drain for 2023. Well, I'm sorry. Okay, we need to close the Court of Revision for the Caddy Drain 2022. And I need someone to move that motion, please. Councillor Lockie, second, Councillor Stewart, and the time is 5:27 p.m. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Motion carried then. All right, now we'll move on. That the council sit at the Court of Revision under the Drainage Act to consider the Brar drain for 2023. And I believe this is all of council in this particular case. Okay. All right. All right. So someone to move the motion? Deputy Mayor Smyber, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Okay. Motion carried then. So then we'll go to the engineer's report then for this particular. We moved that one, so we're good, right? Okay, the engineer's report then. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
It's okay. Yeah, this is again is the core revision. So it's the landowner's opportunity who are impacted by the drain to appeal their assessment if they feel that their assessment is unfair in relation to other assessments. They have that opportunity to voice a concern. I have no knowledge of any written appeals in this case. This report happens to have one property assessed due to the nature and what's being provided and the type of drainage that's being provided. That property had previous discussions and seemed to be okay with it. And again, if there's been no written submissions, you would have the option of entertaining a verbal appeal if it was made.
So is there anyone in attendance or virtually who would like to speak to the issue or have questions?
There's no one in attendance virtually.
And no one in the room then as well. Okay. Any questions from the members of the Court of Revision? No? Okay. So then the motion before us is that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Caddy Drain 2022. I'm sorry, got down to that. All right, apologies. All right, so The recommended motion in this particular case is that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Broad Drain 2023 and with no appeals being submitted, adopt the drainage assessment schedule dated January the 18th, 2023, as submitted by Spreet Associates. A mover? Deputy Mayor Smyberg? Seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. At this point, we'd like to move that the Court of Revision be closed in order to sit as the Committee of Adjustments under the Planning Act. Deputy Mayor Smyberg, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. Yeah. So Committee of Adjustments, the first one we're considering is the minor variance application A1. Thanks, Mr. DeVos. Good night. A1 23, Jonathan Wilson, applicant for the property 254 Terrence Avenue. Ms. Curtis, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. My name is Alana Cortez, and I'm a planner with the County of Middlesex, and I provide planning advisory services to Thames Center. So the purpose and effect of this application is to seek relief from the Thames Center Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw as it relates to the minimum side yard setback to allow the construction of an addition to an existing dwelling in the form of a garage. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-story addition on the east side of the existing dwelling in the form of a garage, having an area of a floor area of approximately 47 square meters with a side yard setback of 1.2 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum side yard setback of 2 meters. The applicant advised that the irregular shape of the lot does not allow for the addition to meet the required setback, although due to the irregular shape, a majority of the garage addition would have a setback greater than 1.2 meters from the easterly side lot line. So the subject property is a 971 square meter residential lot located on the north side of Terrence Avenue between Thames Crescent and Alma Street. As mentioned, the property is irregular in shape with the east side of the lot narrowing from the front to the rear of the lot. The lot contains a single detached dwelling and an accessory building in the form of a shed. The dwelling is serviced by municipal water and a private sewage disposal system, and the easterly property line, an abutting mutual lot line contains a cedar hedge. So the lands are designated residential according to the Thames Center official plan and are zoned residential first density according to the Thames Center comprehensive zoning bylaw. Surrounding land uses are residential in nature in the form of single detached dwellings. Planning staff have conducted our analysis where the variance was evaluated against the 4 tests of a minor variance and are satisfied that the proposed variance meets all 4 tests in that the effects of the variance can be considered minor in nature, can be considered an appropriate use of the land, and the variance maintains the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. In regards to comments received during the circulation for this application, Richard and Susan Hopkins have stated they are supportive of the proposed development. From agency comments received, the county engineer, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, and the drainage superintendent have advised no comments or objections. And the Director of Public Works has advised no comments and concerns, provided that a new street access is not proposed. It is planning staff's recommendation that minor variance application A1-23 be approved for the reasons outlined in the report. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? Sarah, do you have someone?
I have the applicant here, Jonathan Wilson. I'll just bring him over.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson, can you hear us? We'll give him a minute. Mr. Wilson, are you online?
Mr. Wilson, you may have to change the settings on your microphone.
While we're waiting for Mr. Wilson, is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this particular planning application? All right.
Mr. Wilson, can you hear us?
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, can you hear us now? We'll just have to put him back as an attendee for now. We could try
Oh.
at the end.
All right then. So since we're having some connection problems or whatever, are there any questions from any of the council members present? None? Okay. All right. Shall we move to the motion then? Are we ready? Okay. All right. So the recommended motion is that the application for minor variance A1-23 submitted by Jonathan Wilson for relief from the Thames Center Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw in relation to the minimum side yard setback of the residential first density R1 zone to permit the construction of a single-story addition to a single detached dwelling in the form of a garage with a reduced side yard setback of 1.2 meters compared to the required 2-meter setback for a property known municipally as 254 Terrence Avenue, Dorchester, being approved with the reasons as noted on the agenda. All right. May I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? All right, motion's carried. Another motion that the Committee of Adjustment adjourn and reconvene as a public meeting under the Planning Act. Deputy Mayor Smybert, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Okay. So we'll move on to the next part. Item 8.1, consent application for property at in Welburn. Mr. Bancroft, are you on this one or Alana is again? Okay, Alana, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of the consent application is to sever a parcel of land for lot addition purposes to be merged in the same name and title as an abutting residential property. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to rezone the lot to be severed to be consistent with the zoning of the residential property to be enlarged. The property is an 11.4 hectare farm located on the east side of Welburn Road, south of the hamlet of Welburn, and backing onto the CN Railway. The property is primarily used for agricultural purposes in the form of field crop cultivation. The lands are designated agricultural according to the Thames Center official plan and are zoned site-specific agricultural A-45. The applicant is proposing to sever a landlocked parcel having an area of approximately 877 square meters for lot addition purposes to be merged in the same name as and title as the abutting residential property known municipally as 23310 Welburn Road. This land contains landscaped open space and a shed. The applicant is also requesting to rezone the lands to be severed from the site-specific agricultural A-45 zone to the site-specific A-58 zone to be consistent with the zoning of 23310 Welburn Road. So the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the Thames Center official plan generally permit consents involving minor boundary adjustments, provided that a non-viable farm parcel is not created and that agricultural activities are not adversely impacted. In addition, the lands to be severed are required to be merged in the same name and title as the land to which they are being added. The proposed severance is not anticipated to cause adverse impacts on agricultural activities, as the lands to be retained remain suitable for agricultural use. Additionally, the parcel to be severed is not used for field crop cultivation and is instead used for landscaped open space. In all, the consent is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the county and Thames Center official plan. And furthermore, the merging of the land is capable of being addressed as a condition of consent. The Thames Center official plan also contains criteria used to evaluate zoning bylaw amendment requests. These criteria include soil and drainage conditions, servicing, and adequacy of the road to accommodate the development. Planning staff are satisfied that the criteria has been met and that the zoning bylaw amendment would be consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the county and Thames Center official plans. In regards to comments received during the circulation for these applications, no public comments have been received to date. From agency comments received, the Thames Center, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, Drainage Superintendent, Hydro One, and Building Services have advised no objections or concerns. Enbridge Gas has advised that Enbridge service lines are running in the area, which may or may not be affected by the proposed severance. Should the proposed severance impact these services, it may be necessary to terminate the gas service and relocate the line according to the new property boundaries at the cost of the property owner. The county engineer provided comments related to land dedication for the purposes of road widening if the right-of-way is not already to that width. Staff can advise that through application for consent B19-20, the required road widening dedication was previously satisfied along the frontage of the lands to be retained for application for consent B2-23. It is planning staff's recommendation that application for consent B2-23 be approved subject to the 6 conditions that are noted in the report for the reasons outlined in the report. In regards to the rezoning application, planning staff recommend that zoning bylaw amendment application Z4-23 be approved in principle and that the Director of Planning and Development Services be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next council meeting. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm bringing in Stuart Bell, who is the agent.
Thank you. Mr. Bell, whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, go
Sorry
ahead.
with the light there. Yeah, so we're just looking to, there's actually, I live at 23310 Welborn Road, and the adjacent farm has a piece of property that has pretty much been no man's land, just grass. So we're looking to make it a part of our property to square it off.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, is there anyone else looking to speak to the issue?
No, Your Worship, not online.
And anyone in the room who is either? No? Okay. All right then. Any questions from council? Seeing none? Okay. We'll move on to the decision part, and it'll be in 2 parts. The first one deals with consent. That the application for consent B2-23 requested by Stuart Bell on behalf of JCM and Family Farms, Inc. to convey a parcel of land having an area of approximately 877 square meters for lot addition purposes from a property legally described as part of lots 27 and 28, concession 6, geographic township of West Missouri, municipality of Thames Center, be approved subject to the conditions and reasons as noted on the as the pre-circulated agenda. So can I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor Smybert, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. And the second part, that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z4-23 filed by Stuart Bell on behalf of JCM and Family Farms, Inc. for lands legally described as part of lots 27 and 28, concession 6, geographic township of West Missouri, municipality of Thames Center, be approved in principle, and that the Director of Planning and Development Services be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. A mover, Councillor Lockie, seconder, Councillor Heeman, all in favor? All right, that motion is carried. Right, so item 8.2, consent application concerning 2700 Cow Path. Mr. Bancroft?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of the consent application is to facilitate the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, whereas the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the balance of the farm to prohibit any new residential use. The subject property, it's a 71-acre farm, and it's located on the north side of Cow Path, at the north end of Lower Cow Path, and also backing onto the Thames River. This farm is used primarily for the cultivation of field crops, and it contains a single detached dwelling along with an accessory building in the form of a drive shed. The farm is designated agricultural and also zoned for agricultural purposes, except for a portion of the farm that backs onto the Thames River. It would be designated protection area under the official plan and accordingly zoned environmental protection EP. So in terms of the subject proposal, the applicants are proposing to sever a parcel of land having an area of 2.7 acres approximately to facilitate the disposal of a surplus farm dwelling. That proposed lot contains a single detached dwelling along with an accessory building. And the balance of the farm, it is vacant. It would have an area of approximately 68.4 acres. And again, as I mentioned before, the applicant is also proposing to rezone the farm, the balance of the farm, to a site-specific agricultural A-45 zone to prohibit any new residential use. And land zone environmental protection, EP, those would remain unchanged. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted in my report. And the provincial policy statement, the County of Middlesex official plan, and the municipality's official plan, they all generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas for a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, subject to criteria. And in all, I'm satisfied, as outlined in my report, that the criteria has been met or can be addressed through conditions of consent. Also, it is appropriate to rezone the balance of the farm to the A45 category in order to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and also to be consistent with our local planning policies. So in all, the requested rezoning is appropriate and it represents good planning. And also, as a whole, the subject proposal, it would be consistent with the provincial policy statement and in conformity with the Middlesex County official plan and the Thames Center official plan. In terms of agency comments received, Your Worship, from the county engineer, no comment. Also from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, they have no objection. From Enbridge, they haven't outlined any issues. Also from our drainage superintendent, no comment. No objections from building. Also, subsequent to the preparation of my report, I did receive 2 additional comments from Hydro One as well as from Bell Canada, and they have no issues with the subject proposal. In terms of public comment, no responses have been received from the public. So it is my recommendation, Your Worship, that the consent application be 3-23, that it be approved subject to the 7 conditions that are noted in my report, and also based on the reasons outlined in my report. And then lastly, that application for zoning bylaw amendment Z5-23, that it be approved in principle, and that staff be given direction to prepare the necessary amendment for council's consideration at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. Is the applicant in person here or? Oh, there you are. Would you like to come forward up to the table, state your name and your address? Do you have comments that you want to make?
We were just observing.
Oh, okay.
Yes. so
All right.
thank
Well,
you.
that's fine then. Sure. You don't have to worry about it. Thank you. So anyone else wishing to speak to this issue who might be present in the room or online?
There's no one online, Your Worship.
All righty. Okay. How about council? Any questions? Deputy Mayor Smybrick?
I was just curious in terms of the use of the drive shed. What do you have proposed for that?
It's just
Continue then. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council before we proceed? Okay, there again, this is a 2-part decision. The first part being that application for consent B3-23 requested by Thames Ridge Holdings, Inc., care of Graham and Tina Hutton, to facilitate this disposal of a resident surplus to a farming operation, with the lot to be severed having an area of approximately 1.12 hectares for lands legally described as Lot 11, Concession A, SRT, Geographic Township of North Dorchester, Municipality of Thames Centre, and known municipally as 2700 Cowpath, be approved subject to the conditions as outlined and the reasons given in Mr. Bancroft's report and on the current agenda. Mover is Councillor Heeman, seconder, Deputy Mayor Smyber. All in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. The second part, that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z5-23 requested by Thames Ridge Holdings, Inc., care of Graham and Tina Hutton, for lands illegally described as Lot 11, Concession A, SRT, Geographic Township of North Dorchester, Municipality of Thames Centre, and known municipally as 2700 Cowpath, be approved in principle, and that the Director of Planning and Development Services be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at a future meeting. Motion is Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, so we move on to item 8.3, a zoning bylaw amendment application for the property at 164 Eva Street. Thanks very much. Okay. You're doing this, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application before us this evening to rezone the subject property to a site-specific residential zone to permit a second dwelling unit or additional residential unit, ARU. This property, it's 0.4 acres in size. It is a residential lot located on the north side of Eva Street and west of Clara Street in the village of Dorchester. The property contains a single detached dwelling, which is serviced by municipal water along with a septic system, and the lands are designated residential and zoned for the same purpose. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-story building in the form of an ARU, having a total floor area of 73 square meters. And this structure is to be located in the rear yard. It is intended that the ARU would tie into the existing septic system, which also services the existing dwelling, or an additional septic system would be needed to be installed. The water supply, as well as utility connections, those are proposed to be available for the ARU through the existing dwelling. And in terms of surrounding land uses, this is a residential area comprised mainly of single detached dwellings. The only exception would be there's a property at the northwest corner of Eva Street and Clara Street, which contains a 2-unit dwelling. I've connected my analysis, Your Worship, and the provincial policy statement. They encourage an appropriate range and mix of housing types, including ARUs, to meet the long-term needs of the community. The Planning Act also requires that official plans include policies to authorize the use of ARUs, either within a single semi or townhouse dwelling, or within an accessory structure in areas specified by a municipality. At the same time, Your Worship, the County of Middlesex official plan includes similar policies that encourages a broad range of housing types. Under the Thames Centre official plan, it also provides policy direction in allowing ARUs in residential areas, provided that they're capable of being serviced. So in all, I'm satisfied that servicing is capable of being addressed as part of the building permit process. At the same time, the official plan includes criteria for a council to consider in dealing with rezoning applications. And those criteria include soil and drainage conditions, which are to be suitable to permit the proper siting of buildings. That is capable, Your Worship, of being addressed at the building permit stage. Also, the ability for the site to be properly serviced. And considering this part of Dorchester does not have sanitary sewers, as I mentioned previously, the ARU will need to be privately serviced by either tying into the existing septic system or through the installation of an additional septic system. And the ability for the site to be serviced will need to be addressed by a qualified designer as a prerequisite to obtaining a building permit. The other criteria which I should bring about is about conformity with standards required through the zoning bylaw. In terms of on-site parking requirements, the zoning bylaw requires at least 2 parking spaces for a single detached dwelling. And through the recent changes to the Planning Act, municipalities do not have the authority to require more than 1 parking space for an ARU. Considering the driveway is capable of accommodating 3 parking spaces, parking for the ARU can be accommodated based on existing site conditions. The other criteria worth mentioning, Your Worship, has to do with adequate measures will be taken to alleviate or prevent any adverse effects that the proposed use may have upon any proposed or existing adjacent use or on natural heritage features. The analysis in my report concludes that there are no natural heritage features within 50 meters of the subject property. In close proximity, however, to the subject lands is an active railway line, which is within 300 meters. And as such, noise mitigation measures should be required to be consistent with the policy direction that is provided under the Thames Center official plan. I'm satisfied that the mitigation measures as recommended by CN, that they can be addressed by having the applicant enter into a development agreement to be registered on title with the municipality. So in all, I'm satisfied that this proposal is consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the county and Thames Center official plans. In terms of agency comments and the circulation of the application, Your Worship, from the county engineer, they have no comment. From the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, they have no objection. From CN Railway, as noted in my report, they are recommending as a condition of approval that there be mitigation measures implemented, including an environmental easement for operational and noise vibration emissions, registered on title in favor of CN, and also some specific mitigation measures that should be incorporated in the dwelling design. And those are all noted in my report. Also, from the Director of Public Works, he's indicated that he strongly recommends that the driveway be widened and hard surfaced to a width of 6 meters to accommodate additional vehicles. However, I should point out, Your Worship, that based on the analysis that was outlined in my report in terms of parking requirement, the municipality has no jurisdiction in terms of requiring any additional parking that is otherwise being accommodated on site. From our drainage superintendent, he has no comment. In terms of public comments, we do have a number of written submissions in opposition from a Darren Gilbert, from a Mel Nywinning, from Trish Robertson and Doug Blair, and also from Bob Scott. What I wanted to do was to quickly provide a summary of those concerns in the collective to assist council. So those concerns include this proposal is out of character with the current neighborhood, additional parking, depreciation of property values, the septic not being large enough, water table issues if new septic installed, the potential for this to become a rental property, increases in traffic, loss of privacy, noise, along with the whole notion through the animal control bylaw, the maximum number of dogs permitted. It's not based on per property, it's based on a per dwelling unit basis. So if this is allowed, there could potentially be a maximum of 6 dogs permitted on this property. Staff, having considered all of the concerns raised, I foresee there to be nominal impact, considering there's already a 2-unit dwelling at the corner of Eva and Clara Street, to which I'm not aware of any unacceptable adverse impacts as a result of there being 2 residential units on that property. Concerns raised about servicing, as I mentioned before, those are capable of being addressed at the building permit stage. So it is my recommendation, Your Worship, that the subject request be approved in principle, and that I be given direction to prepare the necessary amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting, once the applicant has entered into a development agreement with the municipality to implement CN's recommended mitigation measures. And that agreement be registered against the title of the property. I'm here, Your Worship, to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. Is the agent or the owner in? Yes. Would you like to come up and state your name and your address, please?
Thanks, Your Worship. My name is Luke Vandenbosch. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to municipal staff for their efforts in preparing this application. I would just like to state that we are hoping to push this through, not without considering the fact that it is a solution for affordable and attainable housing In this instance, it's allowing a long-term resident of Dorchester to downsize without having to leave the community. This allows, in a small way, for Thames Center to meet the housing demands without permitting additional urban sprawl into green space. And I think it's reinforced by some of the official plans and recent acts such as Bill 23. And I will take all opposition concerns into consideration during and trying to make the process as smooth as possible for them during construction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else, Sarah, online?
We have a member of the public, Tracy Rowley, coming in.
Okay.
Hi, Tracy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead when you're ready.
I think it's a great idea that they're doing this. And I also have interest possibly in the future to do this for one of our properties too. So that's all I have to say is I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else, Sarah, online?
There's no one else virtually, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Anyone then in the audience here who would like to speak to the issue? Would you like to come forward and state your name and address?
All right, Mr. Bancroft. Never met you, Randy Thompson. I've had the center of the house on Clara Street for 46 years. So you call it a dual dwelling, but it's a single house. It's a semi-detached. It's not a dual dwelling like you said, but you offer to do them. When I first moved in there, it was all swamp. When Mr. or Mrs. Heidi Mettler came in the backyard, I had to go all the way to the back of the house and kick underneath the foundation because the water is that deep. If you look down where you want to build that house, it's straight down in the swamp. I don't know if they're snowballing you. What do you think, Bob? But their laneway is no bigger than your table. Their dogs never be quiet. I don't care. I'm not here to throw stones, but I'm just saying, if you can do that to this house, you can do it to everybody else on the street. What stops it? It's a snowball situation. Like I have the corner house, I had to pay for all the ditch to be put in, all my laneways, all the hydro and everything for the second laneway. Back 40-something years ago when Fuller's all put it all in. They made me pay for it all, even the ditch. I have no idea how they're gonna put a laneway and where it's gonna stop to put somebody back there. If they needed more room, why don't they just buy a bigger house and put a house on it? A bigger lot. Why did they need to put a house back there? And is it, I was understood, somebody told me that was for their family, or is it only for your family? I gotta switch glasses sometimes, sorry. Is it only just for their family? Or is it for anybody they want to rent it to?
Mr. Bancroft, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, through your worship. From a planning standpoint, it has everything to do with the physical structure itself in terms of the bricks and mortar. So it's not as if the municipality has any controls or over who the occupants of the proposed building would be. If they are family members, if they are relatives, or if the structure is put up for rent and they have tenants in the building. It's not as if those matters are regulated through the Planning Act. It's actually illegal to do so. Thank you.
All I'm saying is that, are you saying that everybody can do that all the way down? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Bancroft?
Is
would
it
you
going to
like
be, is that
to
good
answer
for
that?
everybody to do that all the way down on both sides, or is this what you want?
Through you, your worship, through the official plan, which is our policy document for growth and development, there is existing policy direction in place to encourage what is being proposed by this proposal. So to answer the question, every application is based on a site-specific basis. And ultimately, if the criteria is capable of being met, then I see no reason why proposals such as this shouldn't be accepted.
Because
you.
they're using my place as like say, oh, it's a dual dwelling, right? But it's actually a single building. You're asking for two buildings on a property that's 262 feet by 66, because everybody's the same. And I've been there putting here 50 years, watched it all grow.
Randy, does your property have 2 septic systems?
No.
Does it have?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It does?
My property has one down the side for the front and one in the back.
It's a single dwelling.
Yes, 2 septic
Does
tanks.
it have 2 hydro feeds?
Yes, it does.
And it has 2 driveways.
And has 2 driveways, which I put in the second one I put in myself because I asked Mr. Irwin back years ago, when he used to come off Clary Street, when they filled that ditch in, why couldn't I have a driveway on Clary Street if I live on Clary Street? He says, as long as you pay for it, Randy, no problem.
Okay.
So I paid for that, plus I paid for the poles to be put in to make this stuff. I paid for all that with Mr. Fuller. And like I said, it's not 2 buildings, it's 1 building. And if they can think they can put, and I'm saying is that this is good to have an overhead thing, but the thing is the land just goes straight down. Everybody's backyard goes straight down. And there's maybe a 3-foot tile that goes from way back in the back, and you'll see a ditch behind Heidi's and a drain that goes through, that drains that whole section. So if they want to dig back there and put water, they better go dig back there and have the water checked, because they're going to be underwater. Like every house every house, yes, every house, I was going to say, I did. Not much of a
Mr.
talker.
Thompson,
but-
well, thank you for your comments. Is there someone else in the audience who wanted to speak to this?
We're all close to it, so.
Who? Okay, would one person like to come forward?
Now,
and
one thing
speak
I
then?
want to say is, I'm not saying.
Oh, are
I'm
you
opposed. I'm just saying that.
Just for clarification, are you speaking on behalf of the other folks here? All right,
They live closer.
okay,
I actually live on Clare Street.
all right.
So what they're,
What's your municipal address?
243, 241 Clare Street.
241, okay.
Jim Lynn bought my, rebuilt my house. So I tell you.
Okay, all right then. Is there someone else who would like to come forward? All right, can you state your name and
My
your
name
address?
is, my name is John Hagsma. I live across, I live at 167 Eva Street.
Okay,
I am across from the home that is looking to go for a zoning change. And that it was my concern as well. What happens to this property? This is now for a family member coming in. When it changes, situation changes in that family, does this turn into a rental property? So that would be my objections to not knowing what could happen in the future with this.
thank you.
My name is Mark Dirksen and I live at 163 Eva. This is my wife Alice. like John had said, the municipality has nothing to do with what is going to happen to that later on. But bricks and mortar, the water table in that subdivision is so high, our sump pump will run 10 months of the year. And if I don't think 0.4 of an acre is enough land to subject an additional septic system. It probably won't, the one that they would put in probably wouldn't handle it. But then they have to bring in all this fill to accommodate this. The plans are like, at what point, what is the determination of the size of that building? Because now you forfeited all that grass in the backyard that would absorb rainwater or whatever. But now that roof is going to direct it to more low points, the other neighbors. It's already, there's too much water in the area.
And then you brought up they have parking for 3 vehicles. They have 3 vehicles. They never parked them on their driveway. They're always out in the road. We live across the street. There are some days it's a nightmare to get out of our driveway because of all of the cars. Instead of moving one vehicle out to get the other one out, they leave their vehicles on the street overnight. Just this past week, the one truck was on the road for 4 nights. It did not. You can add to that driveway. It doesn't matter. It's an inconvenience for them. They're going to leave it out in the street. So if you have more people living in that house, and I know you have to take into consideration the impact that it has on us. Like, why should it be challenging for us to get in and out of our own driveway because they don't park, right? And I know this doesn't matter to you guys, but Dorchester has always been a super cute village, whatnot. If you can't maintain your property, you're such a good, like, why would you think you can maintain a second property? And I know that doesn't matter to you guys, but for me, who looks at my front window, it matters to me. The construction that's going to go on, that's a safety concern. We have a son with special needs. Okay, so for me to get him into his vehicle to go off to school with all of that construction and everything, I'm going to be doing cigarette knockdowns every morning. You guys, it may not be a big deal. To me, it's seriously this. Okay, the 3 dogs that are constantly barking, we can't even stand out front of our house without those dogs going nuts at the front door. The thought of 6 dogs, my dear God, I couldn't even imagine.
All right. Okay.
Okay. I don't think there's anything else. I'm sure there's lots, but yeah. Oh, even like little things, sorry. Garbage day. Garbage goes, and again, probably doesn't matter to you guys. For me, it's a big deal. Garbage day is on our side of the driveway. You're bringing more people to live in there. Guess what? That's more garbage in front of our place. There are times their garbage is put out 2 days before garbage day. When it comes along, blows it off. Who do you think has to clean that up? They don't. And I have nothing personal against them. I really don't. I say hi, everything. No problem. We're the ones that have to clean up the garbage. When my husband decides to cut the grass that following morning, those recycle cans sit there. Sometimes garbage picked up this Friday morning. Saturday morning, those cans are still there. Right? We live there. We should be able to cut our grass when we want to. We care about our public. Sorry,
thank
I know.
you. No, I understand the passion. I understand the passion.
But the biggest thing for me is the safety.
All right then. Thank you very much. I thought I recognized you, Mark. Yeah.
How are you? I'm Bob Scott. I live on the north side, 148 Eva, so I live on the same side. But they're proposing to build this property. Water issue is one of the main issues of building this house. We have a water issue now. My backyard is a swamp. So anything you do, and I came to the township about it, fixing the swale in my backyard, which they refuse to do. So we won't even go on to that. Next, we have a septic issue. If we have to dig, that water table is going to get disrupted again. So I'm going to have more water because I'm the last big lot on that side. I've been there for over 35 years. And when I purchased that property, I purchased on the understanding with single family homes. I had one house on Clare Street, which I knew when I purchased that house, what it was. I purchased that house on as it was a single family residence. No different if I moved to Tyner, I was buying a single family home. If I wanted to build where semis were gonna be built, I'd have bought there, but I didn't. The value of my house is gonna go down because the last thing people are gonna see is, why does that guy got two houses in his backyard? Bill 23 that Doug Ford has implemented, that's fine. His neighbor isn't gonna build one. And if he does, I'm pretty sure that Doug Ford's gonna shut it down quicker than you can blink an eye. If we were on the south side of the river, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. If we were up in Tyner right now and somebody proposed to do this, it would have been shut down. The north side, once again, has always been, we're just like we're a separate identity. Everything's addressed on the south side, nothing's addressed on the north side. There's always complaints, issues on the north side, doesn't happen. If these people want to build a property, well, their son can live there, then add on to their house. I have no option to that. I don't care about that. If they want to add an addition to their house to put somebody in, but I know for a fact that within 6 months, it's going to be a rental property. So now I'm going to have a slumlord living on my street.
Okay,
You're saying that you're going to have one hydrometer. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that's my understanding.
So you're building a separate identity dwelling that you're going to have one water meter, one water or gas meter, and one hydrometer, even though it's a separate identity, but it's not a separate dwelling. You're saying it's a separate dwelling. So either it is or it isn't. If it is, then it needs to have its own identity. You can't have it both ways. You're trying to tell us that it's a separate identity dwelling that they're building in the backyard, but yet it's running off the main house. So then why aren't you adding an addition to the main house? It would be simple. And I don't think there'd be one opposed person on the neighborhood if they were putting an addition on their back of their house. Nobody would have a complaint about that. But what you're trying to do is add 700 square feet in the backyard, which is bigger than the house, or pretty much the same size as the house they have, you're putting in the backyard.
Mr. Bancroft, are you able to answer any of those questions?
Your worship, the question posed by Mr. Scott in terms of why not construct an addition to the existing house, that is a valid question, but ultimately that's something for the applicant to respond to.
But Bill 23, was it initially not set up for the purpose of adding a family member in your own property? Is what that bill additionally was set up for. So you can have a family member like your mother, your grandmother, or children, because you know they can't afford a house, live on your property, not to rent it out to somebody. I don't believe that was the sole purpose of this, to build an addition in my backyard so I can rent it out. So my property, which is the same size as theirs, I can build multi-properties back in my backyard.
Mr. Bancroft, do you want to speak to Bill 23 and that particular aspect of the ARUs? Because there is, under that legislation, they are allowed to build an additional residential unit.
I understand they're allowed to build.
And that is, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but they are allowed under the current legislation as long as they're capable of being serviced. Is that correct?
Yeah, your worship, I can elaborate. So through Bill 23, which amends the Planning Act, it does permit, as of right, basically without the need to rezone a property, if you've got a residential area that is on municipal water and on sanitary sewers. Now, for example, development in Thorndale, where we've got full municipal services in place, then it is permitted as of right. One does not need to rezone their property to do what is being proposed here. The reason why there is a request to rezone is because there's no sanitary sewers in this part of Dorchester, hence the need to rezone the property.
So my question is, again, technically all we're doing is allowing somebody a financial gain of building a rental property in their backyard. That's what we're doing. That's what we're allowing to happen. And when you do it You open the door, so this is gonna be our test trial in Dorchester on the north side. So we're gonna have rental properties all through the community in people's backyards. So now you're gonna have a community that people wanna live in. When you come out and now you go to a neighborhood and you see this, people are gonna say, I'm not living in this community. Why would I wanna live with somebody who have a house, a rental property in their backyard? I don't know about anybody here, but I'm pretty sure none of you want a rental property in your neighbor's backyard. Like, at no point have these people come to any of the neighbors and ask them, this is what our intent is to do. We see a sign, and had it wasn't for the sign going up, we wouldn't have known. The only thing we'd have found out when they started digging in the backyard. You know, the old thing about common courtesy, about going to your neighbors and saying, this is what I'd like to do. You know, is there any thoughts about it? Is there something maybe I could do to? There is not. Like I say, I've been on that street for almost 40 years. And when I purchased that house, they were all single family homes. And now we're going to go to a rental property in the backyard. Like,
Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make one final point in that in dealing with housing, the municipality has no controls whatsoever if housing is occupied by the owner of who owns that property, or if there's a tenant and that the housing is being rented. There are no controls that the municipality has in controlling those types of situations.
There is, oh, sorry, is chaotic, right? And it's safety concerns at this point. Like, there are vehicles that are parked along both sides of the road already as it is. You bring in construction vehicles, cement trucks, and then another 2 vehicles to that property at least. Like, let's think about the kids on that street. Yeah, I'm being a little bit biased because we have a son with special needs, but can we not consider his safety as well? So I understand the laws are this and that, but what about the rest of us? We pay our taxes too, and we should have a say, and it should be taken into consideration.
Okay. All right, thank you.
so do you guys actually vote about this because there's concerns, or do we just say it's okay to do it?
Well, I would say that we need to take all things into consideration. I'm going to just make a comment here, and that is that it's become more challenging in the sense, Mr. Bancroft is right, under Bill 23, that allows and indeed encourages, and it doesn't matter whether you're on the south side of the river or the north side of the river, can anticipate that at some point or another we're going to deal with this again. I understand what you're saying about the water issues and that sort of thing. But in terms of the provincial legislation, some of these things are going to happen. So I think the next step here is for council to offer their comments. If every member of the public who's here who wants to speak to the issue has completed their comments. Mr. Bancroft?
Your Worship, if I could add one final point. There were concerns raised about grading and drainage and that sort of thing. And the point being, as part of the building permit process, there will be a requirement that a lot grading plan is submitted and certified by a qualified professional, that being either a land surveyor or a professional engineer. Thank you.
So in other words, that should answer some of the questions regarding the water and the slope and that sort of thing of the land. All right. So at this point, does council have any questions or comments that they wish to make? Deputy Mayor Smyburn.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, I guess, for staff. And I just want to understand is, so if the residents have concerns about parking on the street and also noise associated with dogs, that sort of thing, we do have bylaws in place. And I'm not sure if you reported that to the township, but there is an enforcement mechanism to ensure that those bylaws are enforced. So I would encourage you to call into the township office to voice those concerns. I do want to say I support attainable housing. We don't have enough of that, I don't think, in Thames Center. But I do want to say, though, that I understand your concerns. The rules of the game have changed, right? And that's what this new provincial legislation is going to change the way in which housing is built and what's allowed. So I agree with you. When you came, to build your house, how many years ago? Yeah, single family residential, absolutely it was. But the province is allowing these types of units. The new bill, more homes. That's going to change. You're going to see potentially more dwellings on single family lots. And as the planner indicated, this is a situation where you can come and provide some input and have a say because it's going through a rezoning process. With some of the other ones where it's on full servicing, they can go ahead and do that, right? There isn't that mechanism to provide notice and have the discussion in front of council. So I do understand the concerns of the residents in that. Yeah, the rules of the game have changed. And I'm not so sure that the province has really kind of thought some of these out because you've raised really good concerns, and I'm not sure if the province had envisioned some of those answers to some of those questions. So I just want to make sure that you understand if you are having concerns, please call the office for enforcement of those concerns. The other question I had too, and I know that we just recently approved the was it the kennel licensing bylaw or the dog licensing bylaw? I am concerned that and maybe we missed it, or maybe we can revisit it. But if the province is going to be permitting municipalities or allowing for multiple houses on a lot or two or whatever, I think we should give that some due consideration and maybe perhaps take a look at maybe changing that provision so that you're not going to be looking at, double the dogs potentially on a property. That might be something that we can deal with in the future. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lockie?
So I just have one more comment to make. So I recognize that because of Bill 123, we don't really have a lot of say in our approvals, but there is the stipulation that they do need approvals if the house is not going to be on municipal sewage, and this particular residence does kind of apply to that. And I think we need to recognize that there are a lot of drainage issues in that problem in that area. And I am concerned that because they're not on municipal sewage and that, they're going to have to most likely put in another septic tank, that, it is a concern for me in approving this.
Are there any other comments from council? Councillor Heeman? I think you're muted, Tom.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would echo some of Deputy Mayor Smybert's comments about the regulatory framework, but also that we do have an obligation to provide affordable housing. And what I mean by that is within the last 10 years, a mortgage payment has doubled. Rent payments have doubled. If you talk to people under the age of 30, 9 out of 10 don't think that they can ever have home ownership as part of their future. And speaking as a young person, getting out of the parents' basement is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think mechanisms like this are making that possible for people. We have approved similar accessory units in the past with the Severance in Thorndale, where there was an auxiliary and an accessory unit, so 3 units on one lot. And I think just a couple weeks ago, it was south of the river on the horse farm on Elgin Road. We allowed a similar accessory unit. So I think in some ways the horse is already out of the barn on this, and we need to figure out how we can accommodate our neighbors. And I do appreciate the comment about being neighborly, that we all have to live together, and we need to make sure that we're being respectful in doing so.
Thank you, Councillor Heeman.
I'm not sure if you're aware. Oh, okay. All the houses on Eva Street, when they were built, that is all water. If you look on the north side of Eva Street, those houses have water running through their basements. The last house on Eva Street has a stream running through it, which I know that they have fixed. They've had to tap into the drainage system. All them 3 houses on the north side all have water issues. That house strictly behind me was built on a stream. My kids skated back there until that street was done. That is all water in there. And like I say, my backyard right now is a swamp. So to add more building into that side, I'm sorry, but there is way too much water issues down there to be doing anything.
I recognize the challenge.
As long as Mr. Bancroft says what he says he's gonna do and have the environment check out the water situation, I think they're gonna lose anyway. Because, like I said, Heidi's house is behind my place. I went to the back of that house when it was being built and kicked under the foundation because the water was that deep. The stream used to come right through our backyards, right out my property, and they changed it and put a big hole about 3 feet and a drain down there. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't think, I know you're stuck, we're in a hard place because of the bill. But I actually do believe we don't have to worry, because I don't think they're gonna be able to get anything under with all that water. But you know, they have the obligation to try.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate all the comments that have been brought before council. All right. So we need to move to the next. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the comment from the gallery is spot on, that there are a number of engineering processes that have to be met and that are governed by the building department. So it's, all these concerns have to be addressed through the appropriate process.
Thank you, and that's a valid point. So, council, we're at the stage here now where we have a recommended motion in front of us, which I will read out and then we will vote. So the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z6-23 filed by Luke Vandenbosch on behalf of Kathy and Bill Fisher for lands known municipally as 164 Eva Street, Dorchester, to rezone the subject property from the residential first density R1 zone to a site-specific residential first density R1 number, whatever, zone to permit the construction of an additional residential unit, otherwise known as an ARU, with a maximum floor area of 73 square meters, be approved in principle, and that the Director of Planning and Development Services be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting, once the applicant has entered into a development agreement with the municipality to implement CN's recommended mitigation measures, and that the said agreement be registered against title of the said lands. That is the motion before us. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor Smybert, a seconder? Councillor Heeman? All in favor? Any objection? Okay. Under current legislation, I feel I have to vote in favor, recognizing that there are, as Mr. Bancroft has said, some controls in place that may mitigate some of the problems addressed. So on that basis, the motion carries. Thank you. At this moment, motion here is that the public meeting adjourn and council reconvenes its regular meeting in order to continue with its deliberation. Consent agenda. I'm sorry, I'm sidetracked. Mover. Deputy Mayor Smybert, seconder. Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Motion carried. All right. Okay, consent agenda items. The items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and may require discussion, but no action on the part of council. Consent items are received for information or approval in one motion. Council members may request that one or more item be removed for further action. We're going to deal with the first one is the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March the 6th be approved as circulated. So if I could have a mover for that one and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Smybert, Councillor Heeman, all in favor? Okay. And then consent agenda item number 9.2 is a call for nominations for the 2023 OSM Executive Committee. The requested motion is that council approve Deputy Mayor Smybert submitting a nomination for the 2023 Ontario Small Urban Municipalities Executive Committee election. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Lockie, seconded by Councillor Heeman. And all in favor, I guess the motion carries. All righty. Then the remaining part of the consent agenda is the approval of items 9.3 through 9.7 to be received as information. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Smybert, seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, departmental reports, starting with Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator Order. Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through this report, PDS-012-23, it presents council with a new tool, being the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator, or CHIA for short, which was created by the province, has established a framework for the processing of CHIA requests. That's the basis for this report that's before you. And as Ms. Horton explained in her delegation earlier on behalf of Farhi, this new tool essentially replaces MZOs, or ministerial zoning orders. Just for background, the Planning Act was amended through Bill 109, which creates this new tool. And this gives the ability to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing the power to issue orders to respond to municipal requests for expedited zoning approvals outside of the Greenbelt area. So it's only local municipalities that can make such request. So that being lower or single tier municipalities. For publicly or privately owned lands within their jurisdiction. I can only assume that upper tier municipalities cannot make the request because zoning is a function of either single tier municipalities or lower tier municipalities, including Thames Center. The types of development to which this new tool would apply, it's quite broad in terms of the spectrum, in terms of types of uses, and they're all specified in my report. But I just want to quickly touch upon, the types of developments where this could apply. So lands, buildings, and structures that support the quality of life for people and communities by providing public services for health, long-term care, education, recreation, social cultural activities, security and safety, as well any type of housing. So that could include community housing, affordable housing, and market-based housing. Also development associated with transportation infrastructure or buildings that would facilitate employment and economic development or mixed use developments. Also with this tool, it provides essentially an exemption from a decision from having to be consistent with the provincial policy statement or having to conform with municipal official plans. In order to request an order, a proponent has to approach the municipality, and council must pass a resolution identifying the subject lands and specifying the request relief from the zoning bylaw outlined in a draft zoning bylaw amendment. So essentially that resolution that is passed by council, it has to be a supportive resolution in regards to a request coming forward for the specified zoning relief. Also, prior to the passing of a resolution, as outlined in the legislation, the requesting municipality is responsible for the giving of public notice and the undertaking of consultation. The province, however, doesn't provide a framework outlining how notice is to be provided and also the extent of consultation, which quite frankly is not very helpful. Municipalities are also expected to engage with Indigenous communities and consider their interests when faced with a request for an order. Once an order is issued by the minister, and that's once a resolution is passed in support by the municipality, then the municipality is required within 15 days to provide a copy of the order once it's issued by the minister, along with making it available to prescribed persons or public bodies. The Planning Act doesn't specify who those prescribed persons or public bodies are, but they put the onus on the municipality. Traditionally, ministerial orders were seldomly used by previous provincial governments to address matters of urgency. However, they're now being issued at a significant and alarming rate by the current government. And I should also point out that should there be a request brought forth by a property owner requesting the municipality pass a resolution in support, the municipality is essentially the applicant, because if there is no resolution passed by council in support of the request, then the request coming forward is essentially dead in the water. There is no recourse on the part of the property owner to appeal. The municipality in this regard essentially has the final say. So with that being said, as noted in my report, there really is a need to outline a framework and deal with the processing of requests coming forward. So my report indicates that there needs to be a planning justification report provided to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and Development Services with a request coming forward. There's also a need for staff to engage with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing upon receipt of a request. Also, in terms of framework, the need for a public meeting, that it be held at least 20 days before the giving of notice. That the notice outline the purpose and effect of the request, and that it be posted on the municipal website. Also, the need to engage the public, ensure that we circulate to property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. And also in terms of circulation to public bodies, it is being recommended that we follow suit with a zoning bylaw amendment, for example, in terms of circulating to prescribed agencies, same as a zoning bylaw amendment. Also, an obligation that we circulate to Indigenous communities within the geographic limit of Middlesex County. Also, in terms of my proposed framework, Your Worship, once we have the public meeting, at a subsequent meeting of council, I would provide a report for a council's consideration. And if supported by council, council would pass a resolution, again, identifying the subject lands and specifying the requested relief from the zoning bylaw as outlined in a draft zoning bylaw amendment, all of which would be forwarded to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for consideration. And also the need following 15 days of the issuance of an order by the ministry, the requirement for the municipality to circulate the order to any member of the public that has submitted a request in writing to be notified. In terms of financial implications with these types of requests, Your Worship, that varies largely on the location of the subject lands, subject to a requested order. And, you know, that's also based on the level of municipal services that could be provided in a particular area. Also, in terms of financial implications, considering that this is a very new tool in its infancy, it's not as if the municipality has gone out and amended our fee bylaw to include a processing fee if and when such requests come forward. So it's my recommendation, as noted in my report, that firstly, that the report be received, and then secondly, that any request for a community infrastructure and housing accelerator order be processed following the framework that's outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship.
All right, Council. I'm looking for any questions or comments that you may have at this time. Councillor Heeman, your mic is off, I think.
Yeah. Through Your Worship, I just want to thank Director Bancroft for that excellent report and their identification of the potential policy shortfalls. I think we have an obligation to Bill 109 to be in compliance, but I think that we're just given a way to do that responsibly and in a way that recognizes the community in which we're trying to plan. I don't like things being able to take the fast track and not play by the same rules as everybody else has to. So I think Director Bancroft has proposed a way that could at least make that somewhat consistent with other schedules of fees and public notice. So I would be in favor of his proposal.
Anyone else like to make comments? Deputy Mayor Smyberg?
I concur with Councillor Heeman. I just had a question though. Are we reinventing the wheel on this one, or have other municipalities taken a similar approach?
Through you, your worship, that's always the first thing that I do is see what others have done. And unfortunately, because this is in its infancy stage, we're essentially one of the guinea pigs. But as noted in my report, in terms of establishing this framework, I think it's crucial that we engage with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to make sure that we haven't missed anything in terms of advancing these types of requests should they come forward.
Thanks. I just have one other question.
Go
And
ahead.
that's concerning the fee bylaw. So are we anticipating a amendment to come forward shortly? Next meeting?
Any answers to that?
Through your worship, I don't have it on my list in terms of bringing something forward immediately. However, at the same time, the clerk's office usually reaches out on a quarterly, if not at least the halfway point of the year, to see whether or not amendments are warranted. So if anything, it'll probably make that list. Thank you.
Any other comments? CAO?
Your worship, through you, just further to what Director Bancroft mentioned, I think that this is a brand new service that the municipality is going to be providing in sense of the review of these types of applications. So while the fee and charges bylaw wasn't necessarily going to be back in front of council soon, I think that it would require at least a look at this particular one. We can certainly come back with council with the report, and even if the entire bylaw isn't reviewed, we can certainly look at a quick amendment to ensure that this is being dealt with for future applications.
Director Bancroft?
Thank you, your worship. If I could add to our interim CAO, I think it's important for staff to monitor their time to assist in ascertaining what the appropriate fee would be in terms of moving forward with a potential fee through the fee bylaw. Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts, concerns, questions on the part of council? Yeah, we want to do this right because like Mr. Bancroft just said, you know, it's kind of the test case, and this is the first time that we will, as a council, deal with this, but I'm sure going down the road, there will be others. So, all right, in that vein then, the motion before us is that report PDS 01223 entitled Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator Order be received for information, and that any request for a community infrastructure and housing accelerator order be proposed following the framework outlined in the said report. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Smyberg, Councillor Lockie, all in favor? Motion is carried. The second, that report number PDS 015-23 entitled Proposed Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator Order by Escher Planning, Inc. and Municipal Solutions on behalf of Fari Holdings Corporation 4453 Breen Road, Putnam, be received for information, and that this request be processed following the framework outlined in report number PDS 012-23, including the giving of agency and public notice and the holding of a public meeting of municipal council. And following that, the Director of Planning and Development Service provide a report for council's consideration at a subsequent meeting. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Lockie, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Motion's carried. The next one is a request for tender of the new backhoe. Who is speaking to that? Interim CAO, Casabecchia Summers.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, the Director of Public Works is unable to attend this evening, so I'll be presenting the report on his behalf. As Council has noted in the report, there is a recommendation to purchase a new tractor backhoe to replace the current unit. The item was tendered earlier this year. It was approved in last year's capital budget, and again, subsequently included in this one as a prior year capital project continuing into this year. And it was advertised in accordance with our current policies and procedures. As of closing date, there was only one bid submitted from Turamount Cat. That review, there was a review of that tender completed, and staff have determined that it is in adherence to the specifications and confirmed to be compliant. There is a recommendation before you to approve the purchase of that particular unit, and it is important to note that it is within the capital budget amount. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions council might have.
Are there some questions? Are there questions from council? Councillor Lockie?
Has Turamount provided any information on when they could deliver it, or is there any sort of backlog?
Through your worship, in answering the councillor's question, I am not aware of any specific timelines. The order will be placed as soon as possible. There is usually a bit of a delay in getting some of these larger pieces of equipment, but I don't have the specific timeline. I can certainly look into it and get back to council though with the timeline.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So unless there are any other questions, we'll move on to the motion. The recommended motion is that council receives report number PWFL-001-23 for information, and that council direct the Director of Public Works to award the purchase of a Caterpillar Model 440 Next Gen Tractor Backhoe to Turamount Cat. Mover and the secondary, Councillor Heeman, and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? All right, motion is carried. So there being no other items before us in this session, we will move adjournment. Council will be moving into closed session, for which there will be no live streaming. So may I have a mover and a seconder for the motion to adjourn? Councillor Smybert and Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you to the planning staff.